If you will permit me some latitude here, I'm going to read a bit from this entry in Wikispooks, the website Wikispooks, on the subject of the strategy of tension. Now, the term strategy of tension caught my attention earlier today when actually someone who posts memes on Instagram just posted something from some generic source about the whole subject of the strategy of tension, and it caught my eye, it caught my imagination, and it sounded eerily relevant. So, what is the strategy of tension? I'm not going to just read everything here, but I want to read some of what's on this particular page, and just we can walk through this together, you and I, and we can see if this would seem to apply to current events, to the contemporary situation. So the strategy of tension is a method of social control involving a series of covert attacks upon a population intended to promote stress and fear among them. The purpose is, by inducing a mistrust of one another and of the world at large, to increase childlike dependence upon perceived authority figures such as national governments. The English phrase originates from the Italian strategia della tensione, which was first applied to Operation Gladio in Italy during the years of lead. And Operation Gladio is a whole... Okay, I'll just read it. Read what they have here about it. Operation Gladio is a NATO-backed paramilitary network established after World War II, reportedly inspired by fear of the USSR. It was also called the Stay Behind Network, since if the Red Army invaded Europe, its members would stay behind enemy lines to disrupt Soviet control. Officially non-existent. But, so I'll just click over to Operation Gladio. Gladio was responsible for bombings, kidnappings, and assassinations to such an extent that the network was publicly exposed in Italy in the 1980s and was the subject of a BBC documentary some years later. Okay. So Operation Gladio was come to be called Operation Gladio was never intended to be publicly acknowledged. It was a multinational military plan to arm and train clandestine groups in many, perhaps all of its member countries and elsewhere in Europe. The official narrative on these networks is confused, contradictory, and definitely incomplete. All right, so it seems that there is enough evidence that this plan, this operation, did exist, but a lot of it is still shrouded in secrecy. And the idea was to generate this. Was what they adopted this so-called strategy of tension, and if they were willing to do it in Europe in the post-war era, are we to think that they aren't willing to do it in a domestic setting right now? Given, again, not to sound like a broken record here, but given, again, the fact that the Smith-Mundt Act was repealed, making it legal to propagandize American citizens. So, again, like I've said before, I believe it's legal. If there's nothing technically legally wrong if the network news fabricates a story entirely from whole cloth, or if it orchestrates something, if it orchestrates an event, and then claims that it's evidence of domestic terrorism or something like that. So again, on the strategy of tension, the methods used are most obviously illegal and violent: kidnappings, assassinations, paramilitary operations, but also include propaganda, economic sanctions, support of civil unrest, fake grassroots movements, promotion of disruptive memes or technologies, and the escalation of formerly peaceful protests by use of agents provocateurs. Remember in 2020, um, when the George Floyd uh, stuff was happening and cities were burning, I remember there were a couple of videos out there which showed how these these uh, these pallets of bricks had been left behind, had just been left in these urban centers where they knew the demonstrators would be meeting to demonstrate, and there were a couple of guys who got online and said, "No, no, no, we see what you're doing here. You got to do better than this." I remember this distinctly. You know, who left these pallets of bricks in these places right next to these buildings with all these windows? You know, that's a provocation in and of itself. That question was never answered, as far as I know. But that's an example of what I'm talking about. Okay, escalation of formerly peaceful protests by use of agents provocateurs. These are typically carried out under a false flag and combined with disinformation and use of enemy images to demonize uninvolved third parties. Okay. Um, there's the plausible deniability. Strategy of tension operations are potentially disastrous if uncovered, so require a high level of secrecy to afford their perpetrators plausible deniability. To be effective, they must be sustained and are therefore the preserve of intelligence agencies. So, at one time, again, the Western Europe in the chaotic days following World War II, but really going on, it seems like it, from what I understand, particularly in Italy, this was in between the 60s and the 80s, like around 1960 and 1980. Um, so back then, the theater of war, um, the theater of this psychological war, this strategy of tension, was was abroad. But now it seems that it is domestic. It would seem. Of course, there's always plausible deniability. You know, it's just crazy people suddenly being crazy, suddenly activating, and you know, suddenly something activates in them, and they do something. You know, like shoot a bunch of people. And it comes out that the police did nothing to stop him, and it comes out that the FBI had their eye on the guy for a long time, but did nothing to stop him. Uh, Again, okay. The Psyop component of the strategy of tension. This is from Wiki Spooks that I'm reading from here. The main target of a strategy of tension is the public opinion to manipulate votes, create a casus belli. I don't know if I'm reading that, if I'm pronouncing that right. I'm sure someone will correct me. A legitimate cause to, or a cause to legitimate a war, to call for a strong leader. We need a strong leader right now. We need someone. We need, you know, screw your freedoms, like Arnold Schwarzenegger said. We need to give up our freedoms. Uh, in order to be safe, you know, to call for a strong leader or roll out mass surveillance and denounce peacemakers as unpatriotic. And isn't that's happening now? You know, people who don't want to see people who say, "Wait a minute, Russia's not my enemy. I don't want a war. I don't want war with Russia. What are we doing over there? What is our military doing in that part of the world, getting involved in this war?" You know, let's instead of that, why don't we try to negotiate for peace? Why don't we try to arrange a peaceful settlement? But they don't want that. They don't want peace. So, in fact, any scare tactic will do. And we can see that a lot of things seem to be being tried right now. Okay. So that's the strategy of tension. And this again has come out just because I guess there were a few whistleblowers and a few things that emerged over the course of time. So I'll just read a little bit more here. This is from an article by Danielle Ganser. I've never read anything by this person before. But she, I believe it's a she, is writing about the strategy of tension. In its essence, the strategy of tension targets the emotions of human beings and aims to spread maximum fear among the target group. Tension refers to emotional distress and psychological fear, whereas strategy refers to the technique of bringing about such distress and fear. A terrorist attack in a public place, such as a railway station, a marketplace, a supermarket, a school, is a typical technique through which the strategy of tension is implemented after the attack. And this is a crucial element. The secret agents who carried out the crime blame it on political opponents by removing and planting evidence. Well, again, I haven't paid any attention. I haven't watched the news. Everything that I'm hearing is just what gets filtered down to me. So I don't know, because I don't trust any of it, and you shouldn't either. You shouldn't trust any of it. But what I do think there is ample evidence of is something like this is happening. Okay, exactly how is it being orchestrated? I don't know, and you don't know, and nobody will ever know. I don't think. I don't think we're going to know all the ins and outs of it, of how it works, of how they manage it. Unless you're on the inside, you're not going to know. It must be noted that the targets of the strategy of tension are not the dead and the wounded of the terrorist attacks, as many might assume. The targets are political opponents who are discredited through the attack, and those who remain unharmed but learn of the attack, thereby coming to fear for their lives and those of their loved ones. Well, I mean, this could apply to any false flag attack that's happened in recent times or even in non-recent times. But I don't know. I'm just saying, I think there's something to this. I think there's something. Okay. There's something credible in this assessment. So I'll just read a bit more. Through the strategy of tension, people learn to expect that something bad will happen in the near future, something which cannot be controlled, and that which happens intermittently. And that happens intermittently. In behavioral psychology, this is a special case of operant conditioning, which is associated with dependence or addiction. Dependence on political leaders, in this case, who promote a solution to, quote, rescue people from their distressed state. Learned helplessness. I think you watch the news enough and you listen to enough people, and that's the condition that you find yourself in. Learned helplessness. You think you're armed with information because you watch the news, but really you're just drawn further and further into this psychological spider web, this this trap. You're and you feel more and more helpless, and less and less like you can do anything to stop any of it. And of course, this is helped along by the black pill people who say, "Oh, they've already won. The globalists have already won. We're so screwed. You know, we might as well just give up now." I mean, you say things like that, you might as well be working for the enemy, even if you aren't. So there's some kind of Operation Gladio like thing happening today, is what I believe. I just don't think that, we see this confluence of events like we've seen. This isn't me saying that every single thing that ever happens is just a part of a carefully planned conspiracy or anything like that. Don't caricature what I'm saying. It's just to say that seen in its totality, it's hard to avoid uh, reaching this kind of conclusion, and that the end goal is to make us feel unsafe and make us feel dependent and needy and demoralized. It's a demoralization campaign. It's like you never can catch your breath. There's always something else. There's always some new current thing. They're always screaming in your face about something. So that's what I think is going on. Thanks for watching.